My wife Abby loved going to the movies. If I wanted to make my wife happy, all I had to do was take her to a good movie. I could just take her to a movie. It had to be in one of 4 categories: animation, action-adventure, drama, or romance. Abby also went to almost any movie that was with Tom Torino, Matt Wright, or Brad Talbot. They were her favorite actors. My first date with Abby was when I took her to see Sleepless in Seattle. She didn't really like Tom Hanks, but she loved the story. Years after we got married, she admitted that she fell in love with me after that movie. Why she did this, I have no idea. After 12 years of marriage, Abby is still a very beautiful woman. At 5 feet 6 inches tall and weighing 115 pounds, she has a magnificent figure. Her dark emerald green eyes really stand out against her raven hair. When Abby gets dressed to go out, she still turns men's heads in her direction. My name is John Sawyer, and I'm no slouch either. I'm 6'1" and 180 pounds. I have sandy hair and blue eyes. Abby and I have been told many times that we make a great couple. During college, before I met my future wife, I never lacked female companionship. However, when I met Abby, I realized that I didn't want anyone else. And for 12 years, I thought Abby felt the same way about me. We met in our first year and fell in love with each other. Our love grew during our 4 years at one of the state universities, and we got married 3 months after graduation. Abby is my true love, my soul, my everything. I couldn't imagine life without her. And while we both love our 2 children to the core, it really has to be spontaneous when they're not around. Tonight was supposed to be just the 2 of us. We decided to go dancing with 3 other couples that evening. Since we had to stay out late and drink, we booked rooms in a hotel in the city center. My parents and I had agreed to take our 2 girls for the night, so it was going to be a really special night. It turned out to be something special, good, but not at all what I thought. When we got to the nightclub, I couldn't understand what was going on, but the mood seemed to have turned sour. The women seemed to be nervous about something, and one of the men seemed somehow smug. Of the 3 couples, I really liked George and Helen, and Bob and Anna. George was a software engineer, while Helen was a stay-at-home mom with 3 children. Bob owned his own plumbing company, and his wife worked in the office doing the bookkeeping. The only couple I didn't really like were Chad and Thelma. And to tell you the truth, I had a good time with Thelma, but I thought Chad was a jerk. But Abby and Thelma were college roommates and remained good friends. So I had to put up with Chad. As far as I could understand, he had something to do with the film industry. I think Chad said he was an agent or something. From what I could gather, he was not very successful, but Thelma had a high-paying job as a pharmaceutical representative. I am a financial advisor at one of the major brokerage houses. When I first started in business, things were slow, but now I have more business than I want. The way it works with my firm is that once you reach a certain number of clients, the firm insists that you train someone and place a new consultant with your excess clients. Of course, you keep the most profitable clients for yourself. I've had to do this twice already, and I'm close to doing it again. I make a really good living. Abby began working as an administrative assistant for Mike Winston, executive vice president of a regional bank. When our 2 girls were born a year apart, Abby became a stay-at-home mom until Stacy, our youngest, entered 1st grade. Then one day Mike called her and announced that he had been promoted to president, and he wondered if she would be interested in working for him part-time. Abby asked me, and I told her to go for it. If you think I made a mistake by letting Abby go back to work and now she's sleeping with her boss, you'd be completely wrong. Mike is 62 years old, bald, but more importantly, he is completely devoted to his wife and 5 children. Like I said, something was a little off, but I didn't know what it was. And at that moment, I didn't care. I was looking forward to an evening of dancing with my wife and a whole night of love afterwards. We dispersed around the room, as we knew several other couples who were there. If you dance well enough, you'll meet some really nice people. One couple was an old college friend, Fred Abbott, and his wife, Brenda. I stopped to talk to them as Abby and the others walked to our table. I was about to join my wife when the music started. But then a noise was heard at the door. A crowd gathered at the entrance and then parted. Brenda gasped. "What's wrong?" asked Fred. "Don't you know who it is?" Brenda held her breath. I looked back and saw an extremely handsome man. He was only about 5'6" or 7 inches, but as the women would say, he was gorgeous. Both Fred and I expressed our ignorance. "This is Brad Talbot," she blurted out. He and his fiancée, Rita Summers, are two of the hottest stars in Hollywood. "Oh yeah," Fred said and started looking past Brad. "I wonder if Rita Summers is here too." "John, on a scale of 1 to 10, Rita is at least 15. Brenda playfully slapped her husband's arm. "Dream about it." When I looked at Brad, I really recognized him. He was one of my wife's favorite actors. I was wondering if I could get her an autograph, but what happened completely stunned me. Brad came straight to our table and asked my wife to dance. Without hesitation, she jumped up and danced with him for the next 4 songs. I walked over to the table and sat down, completely furious. My wife didn't even ask me if I was okay with her dancing with someone else. When the 5th song started, I wanted to intervene, but Chad's glass fell to the floor. As he reached to pick up the broken glass, he raised his bloody hand. "John, could you help me with this?" he asked. I looked at my dancing wife and then at Chad. I should have just gone to my wife, but instead, I followed Chad into the men's room. However, when I got there, the cut was very minor. However, I helped him clean it and bandage it with a paper towel. When I returned to the table, I only caught a glimpse of my wife leaving with Brad. I rushed after them. Chad followed closely behind me, and as we walked out the front door into the parking lot, I saw Abby getting into the car with Brad. I ran to catch up with the car. The moment I saw Brad kiss Abby's hand while she was laughing at something he said, Chad kicked my legs. I fell to the ground, but got up in an instant. "What the hell did you do?" I yelled. "Brad is just going to take your wife for a ride," he said with a grin. Thelma appeared a few seconds later. "This is Abby's dream date." She told Chad and I how much she liked Brad, so we agreed that he would ask her out. "This is my fucking wife!" I screamed. "Didn't you think I should know about this?" "Abby told us you would say no," Chad said with a grin. "Just go with the flow." "Fuck you! Go with this flow yourself!" I shouted, pouncing and punching Chad right in the bridge of his nose. The sound of his nose shattering was the only good thing that night. Thelma then rushed at me, throwing punches and trying to kick me. Luckily for me, Fred saw what was happening and followed me. He quickly pulled Thelma away and sat her on the other side of him. "He attacked my husband!" Thelma started screaming. "No, he didn't do it," Fred said calmly. "You two attacked him first. He was just defending himself." Thelma became enraged and called 911. The police arrived about 10 minutes later and began taking statements. Fred continued his story and I told the same thing, adding that Chad hit me in the legs first. The people who gathered after the riots began saw only Thelma attack me. They told the officers that all they saw was me just trying to get away from her. Chad and Thelma were eventually arrested. By the time the police left, I was devastated. I returned to our table and saw 2 women smiling. "Where is everyone else?" Helen asked. "Chad and Thelma were arrested for assaulting me," I replied, trying my best to contain my anger. Abby left with Brad and seemed very happy about it. "This shouldn't have happened," Anna said. "She just had to go outside with Brad, take a few pictures, and then go back to the table." "My wife and Thelma obviously didn't tell you what the real plan was," I said, getting up to get a drink. Fred caught up with me at the bar. "Are you going to be okay?" he asked. "I don't know what the hell is going on," I admitted. "I hope my wife just went for a drive with this movie star and comes back soon. When she returns, we will have a very unfriendly conversation." "Look, John," Fred said concernedly, "I don't want to start a fire, but Brenda told me that Brad Talbot is a notorious womanizer. He seems to enjoy sleeping with married women. I hope this doesn't apply to Abby, but I think you should prepare for the worst." My heart sank. I didn't know what to do, but I told Fred I'd be fine. Before returning to the table, I tried calling Abby on her cell phone. The call immediately went to voicemail. The atmosphere was very awkward when I sat down. The wives looked very ashamed and their husbands looked furious. I continued to try and reach Abby without success. Finally, 2 other couples said they were going back to the hotel. I told them I would stay for a while to see if Abby would come back. I waited half an hour before heading to the hotel. I waited there until 3 in the morning, calling Abby's phone every 10 minutes. Finally, in disgust, I checked out and headed home. I got there around 4 and sat on the sofa. I must have fallen asleep because the sun shining through our bay window woke me up. It was already 7 in the morning. I checked our bedroom, but Abby had not returned yet. Then I checked my cell phone, and there were no messages from Abby. So, I logged into my computer and opened our Facebook page. He exploded with pictures of Brad and Abby leaving a nightclub, pictures of them walking into his house, pictures of Abby walking into Brad's house on his arm. I searched Hollywood websites and they were all blown up by Brad's latest conquest with a married woman. At this moment, I was beside myself with rage. I immediately called my lawyer, and since it was Saturday, my call was forwarded to his home. He wasn't too happy about my call until I explained what was going on. He convinced me not to do anything until Abby came home and explained her behavior. Finally, around 11, the front door opened, and Abby walked in with a big smile on her face. The smile disappeared when she saw the expression on my face. "We didn't do anything," Abby said immediately. "We just spent the night talking. I know I should have asked you, but I was sure you would say no. You know how much I love movies and that Brad Talbot is one of my favorite actors. Last night was like a fairy tale. Nothing happened, John. I still love you with all my heart." I just stared at her, and I could almost feel the steam coming out of my ears. "I want you, slut, to pack up your shit and go to your parents. I can't even look at you right now." "John, why do you make such a big deal about this?" she asked with irritation and slight fear in her voice. "We were just talking. There was nothing special about it. It doesn't really matter." "This is damn important to me," I said through clenched teeth. "I don't believe for a second that nothing happened. But for the sake of argument, let's pretend nothing happened. You still embarrass me in front of the whole world." "Now you're just being overdramatic, John," Abby said, putting her hands on her hips. "Outside our group, no one knows anything. And Helen and Anna know that for me, it was just a harmless adventure." "You stupid bitch," I snapped, which made Abby recoil. "I've never talked to her like that before. This is the top story on all Hollywood news sites. They have pictures of you and Brad leaving the nightclub, heading to his house. And by now, they probably have pictures of you leaving his house this morning. I think our marriage is over. So get your shit together and get out before I do something I'll regret." "Please, John, I'm sure you're exaggerating." Abby was now on the verge of tears. "I love you with all my heart. Sorry if I upset you, but nothing happened. I knew you'd be annoyed, but I thought you'd give me a pass when you found out nothing happened. We have to deal with this. Think about the girls." "You bitch weren't thinking about your girls when you ran off into the night with your movie star bastard," I hissed at her. "Would you like Stacy or Gail to do something similar when they become adults?" Abby turned pale at these comments and then burst into tears. "I'm so sorry, John. I didn't think it would be so important. I made a mistake. Please forgive me." "You're right, you didn't think." I was beside myself and getting angrier every minute. I had to get Abby out of the house before I did something I truly regretted. So, I left her standing in the hallway and headed to our bedroom. I pulled a suitcase out of the closet and started throwing Abby's clothes into it. "I'll do it," Abby said through sobs after a few minutes. She then slowly packed her suitcase and carried it downstairs. I didn't even offer to help her carry it. I waited until she was out the front door before I slammed it shut. I looked out the window to make sure she was gone. I saw her put her bag in the trunk and sit in the driver's seat. Then she lowered her head to the steering wheel and began to sob. I didn't even want to go out and console her. I was too damn angry. About 20 minutes later, she started the car and drove away. I immediately called my parents and explained to them what happened. I asked if they would keep the girls a little longer, and if Abby shows up, tell her I have them. They agreed. I was then left to contemplate the ruins of my marriage. I started going over it all back and forth in my head. Abby insisted that nothing happened. Could this be true? I didn't know, but my gut told me she was lying. Can I accept what she did and try to move on? If, as she believed, no one knew about it except our friends, maybe. Now that it went viral, I didn't see any way forward for our marriage. I desperately wanted revenge on both of them, but I couldn't think of anything to achieve it. I cried for at least an hour, banging on the walls and doors as I walked around the house. I felt so powerless. I knew I couldn't get back at Brad. He was a Hollywood hotshot, and there was no way I could touch him. And I knew the divorce would hurt me financially. But if it came to that, I was prepared to work from home and sue for full custody of the girls. Since I was obviously the more stable of the two parents, I felt like I had a great shot at it. I don't think Abby ever considered that her actions might actually be taking her girls away. But the thought of the damage divorce would have on my daughters gave me a lot of pause. Around 1 o'clock in the afternoon, I was just making more coffee when the phone rang. Until now, the media had not received my phone number, but I knew that this would not last long. "Hello?" I answered the call. "This is John Sawyer, and your wife's name is Abby?" A female voice asked me. "Listen," I snapped. "I'm not in the mood to talk to reporters." There was a quiet giggle, a bit like the ringing of bells. "Okay," said the voice. "I hate talking to them too." "Who is this?" I asked, fully prepared to hang up. "My name is Rita Summers," she answered quietly. "I think you've already met my fiancé, Brad Talbot?" "Yes, I know this idiot. I didn't know where this conversation was going, but I wanted to end it as quickly as possible." "Do you love your wife?" asked Rita. Her question puzzled me. I sighed. Despite everything my wife has done, I still love her. However, after everything that has happened, I don't think there is any chance of saving our marriage. I just can't come to terms with what she did. If I could offer you a way to hopefully save your marriage and also save my relationship with Brad, would you be interested? My heart began to beat unevenly. I had to sit down and think. Finally, I answered, "Yes, I would love to save my marriage, but I just don't see any way to do it." There was another quiet chuckle, followed by a sigh. "I've loved Brad for a long time. We have known each other since childhood. He comes from a very dysfunctional family like me. His father was a womanizer, and as a result, his mother hated all men. She showed Brad absolutely no love. Nothing he did ever made his mother happy. He had slept with married women many times before. I think this is Brad trying to get the love his mother never gave him. In any case, I come from the same dysfunctional family. Only in my family, my mother was a drunkard and my father abused me. Brad was all I had back then, and I loved him to the core. But then he left when his mother divorced his father. I cried for weeks. We reconnected in Hollywood after we both became famous. I had heard stories about Brad and was very wary of getting into a relationship with him. But as soon as we saw each other, we fell in love again. And when we got engaged, he promised me that relationships with married women were left behind. When I asked him about your wife, he stated that nothing had happened. I have no way of proving it one way or the other. But right now, the thought of losing Brad is driving me crazy. Yes, my wife also told me that nothing happened, I admitted. And the thought of losing her drives me crazy too. Do you believe her? No, I don't know. And I don't know either. I know Brad, and it would be completely out of character for him to bring a woman into his home and do nothing. But I suppose stranger things have happened. However, I am operating under the assumption that something actually happened. So, I want him to understand the pain he caused me. And I want your wife to understand the same. I don't know if it will be enough, but I hope that if we succeed, we can move forward with our couples. I'm with you for now, I said. How are you going to achieve this? I'm not going to do this alone. We'll do it together. Now I was confused. What could I do to get back at my wife, let alone Brad Talbot? You'll have to spell it out because I don't see how I can do anything. First things first, she said. To get the most out of what I want to do, I need you to slowly open a dialogue with your wife towards a possible reconciliation. I'm going to do the same with Brad. I'm not talking to him right now. I'd say in 2 to 3 weeks, I'll start talking to Brad, and you should let your wife move in with you around the same time. I'll let you know when. You will still keep your distance, and you should not sleep with her. Why would I let her back into the house? Because as soon as she gets home, we will have dinner together, and I will explain my plan. I still have some parts of my plan that I want to think about. I still wasn't sure about it, but I didn't have any better ideas, so I decided to go with it. The first thing I did was call my parents and tell them that I would pick up the girls in half an hour. I then called my administrative assistant, Joni, and told her that I would be working from home for the next week or so. I could tell from her voice that she already knew the story about Brad and my Abby. She was very helpful and told me to let her know if there was anything she could do to help. Finally, I called Abby's parents at home. Abby's father answered the phone and was very apologetic. He saw some of the reports on the news and was ashamed. But he was extremely relieved when I asked to speak to Abby. She burst into tears over the phone. She kept saying how sorry she was and how she wanted to come home so we could talk about it. "Listen, Abby," I said calmly, "I think it would be good for us to be apart for a while. Next week I'm going to work from home. You will have to work from Monday to Wednesday. Why don't you pick up the girls on Wednesday night? Then we'll talk about everything. I plan to pick up the girls on Sunday evening." "Please, John," she cried. "I want to go home now. I want us to be a family again." "You don't want us to be a family anymore?" "I thought we were family," I said sadly. "But then you made me doubt everything I thought we had. I'll see you on Wednesday evening, say around 5. I picked up the girls and told them that Mom would be spending a few days with their grandparents. They had a lot of questions about why, but the topic dropped when we headed to McDonald's. The girls ran around playing games for 2 or 3 hours. And then we had dinner there. The phone rang just as we got home. I looked at the caller ID but didn't recognize it. When I responded, the reporter asked me if I wanted to comment on my wife's affair with Brad Talbot. I hung up the phone. After that, the phone rang every 5 minutes. I finally got him off the hook and just left him. Around 6, my cell phone rang. It was Abby. "Why don't you answer phone calls?" she immediately demanded. "Because they were just reporters who wanted me to comment on your affair with Brad Talbot." "There's no romance," Abby growled. "I told you nothing happened." "Well, then you need to tell the rest of the world about it, because for some reason they don't believe it," I said sarcastically. There was dead silence on the other end of the line. Abby then asked if she could talk to the girls. So I put them on the line and sat down listening to that side of the conversation. They chatted about their day at McDonald's. Finally, Stacy handed me the phone and told me that my mom wanted to talk to me. Abby again begged to be allowed to return home. I told her I needed more time. On Wednesday night, Abby was there around 4 instead of 5. I was a little annoyed that she had ignored my instructions. But I decided to leave everything as it is. The girls were happy to see her, and Abby showered them with kisses. When she came towards me to kiss me, I backed away. She looked at me with pain and irritation. "So this is how it will be now?" she said irritably. "If that's the case, maybe I should just take the girls and leave." "If that's what you want to do," I said calmly and walked away. "No," Abby said quickly, with slight panic in her voice. "I think we should sit down and talk about our problems." The girls went to pack their overnight bags because Abby told them they would be visiting their grandparents.